and welcome to Season 1, Episode 1 of the Coaches at Crown Brew Getting Coffee podcast alongside Coach Kerry Martin. I'm Riley Swinford on behalf of the Swinford Media Group and the Marion Star. Coach, we're excited to launch this new endeavor with you today.
Man, I'm excited. You know, I had this thought during COVID. I was watching Netflix like everybody else, and I stumbled across the Jerry Seinfeld series where he interviewed comedians while he had coffee. And I thought to myself, there's a place to interview coaches over coffee. And now that I'm fully retired, it's time to bring this thing to fruition and make this happen. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, we're excited to do it with you. This is a guy who needs obviously no introduction, but longtime Marion coach at Marion for 20 years, led Marion to 17 straight playoff berths. First year out of coaching, Marion's off to a good start under new coach Jason Dunning, but Coach, normally this time of year, on a Thursday night in the fall, I would probably be at Wildcat Stadium right now talking to you about strategy. You know, who's Marion got? How's the opponent looking? It's a big South 7 Conference matchup coming. Yeah. That's not why we're here today. We're sitting, drinking our coffee. We're on the couch. We're not going to be getting into the X's and O's talk. We're not going to ask you for your game plan for this big game tomorrow night. Instead, tell the people at home more of what your vision is for this.
Well, this is a big change, right? This has been an adjustment period for me, is not having you on the field asking those questions. And so I've tried to find another avenue, and I wanted to promote my sport. I wanted to promote athletics and promote the coaches that are out there doing what I did for 37 seasons. And this is going to be a coach-to-coach interview every week or every so often. We're going to bring in coaches from all over Southern Illinois, retired coaches, current coaches, male coaches, female coaches. And I get to go on the other side of the microphone and I get to ask the questions. And I really want to get to the heart of the coaches. You know, we watch them on the sidelines. We see the sound bites. We hear what they call the coaches speak, where they're saying what coaches have to say. But I want to get to the heart of the coaches. I want to get into their minds a little bit. I want to find out why they do what they do. I want to find out how they do it. It really isn't about, as you said, the X's and O's part of it, but it's about kind of the other side of coaching. And I want people to get to know the men and women that are leading our kids and making a difference.
So tell the people at home, you know, as we talk kind of behind the scenes to plan this, it's not going to just be necessarily Marion coaches.
No.
It's not going to necessarily be football coaches. You're willing to hear from all different types.
I do. Yeah, we're going to look at coaches from all across the athletic spectrum. And so, you know, I've got some people lined up, and I think people that I talk to about it are excited to have this opportunity to share some of their insight. And, you know, I want to know about the secrets to their success. I want to know about what allows them to have success over time. I want to talk to them about the challenges that are coming with as the sports change and as society and culture are going through changes, and they always do. How are these coaches who have this great longevity, how are they still having success over time? And I want to know about their legacy. I want to know what they want their legacy to be. I want to get into the impact that they want to have, and I'm anxious to find out what makes them tick. So I'm hoping to learn a lot from these interviews, and I want the people who are listening and watching to learn a lot about who these individuals really are, because I think they're going to be surprised at how amazing some of these people are. Some people already know that, but I think it's a chance to really get to know the heart of some of these individuals.
Awesome. Yeah, we're excited to do this. Now, most weeks I won't be involved. It will be the coach over here talking to another coach, hence the name of this podcast.
Right.
But today, Coach, to kind of set the tone for what we're hoping to do with this, I'm going to put you on the hot seat one last time. I'm going to get to interview you. I miss talking to you on Friday nights and leading into the game. So some of these questions that you'll be sitting in my seat asking other coaches, I want to ask you first today to set the tone. And one thing that stood out to me and stuck with me when we started planning this, the thing you told me is you think that if you're good at coaching one sport and you're good at relating to the athlete and you're good at coaching and teaching certain skill sets, if you give that person enough time to study the skills and the rules for another sport, they could take that sport and be just as talented at coaching it. Yeah. And I thought that was really fascinating when you told me that, and that's something that you're going to be getting into the mind of these coaches with, is what makes a good coach? What makes someone able to relate to young student athletes? And I just thought that was fascinating to think about a dance coach coaching football, or if you went from coaching football to coaching dance, that those attributes that you have that made you such a good leader could translate to a different sport.
Well, coaching is about teaching. And I think it's about communication. It's about building relationships. It's about motivating. And there's great value in expertise for sure. But I think expertise can be learned over time. But those abilities to motivate and communicate and build relationships are things that the best coaches do. And whether they're doing it in cheerleading or whether they're doing it in softball or football or basketball, I believe they could transfer that to about any sport they coach, to anything they do. A lot of these individuals I'll interview are just as good or not better in the classroom. And they're doing that in the classroom in front of 6 or 7 class periods every single day. And you hang a whistle around their neck or you put a clipboard in their hand or whatever coaching thing you think of, then they transfer that to the field or to the court, and they're doing it there. And I think that's what I want to get to, is the fact that these are individuals that are gifted to do this. I've often said that I think the faith-based professions, medical professions, and teaching professions, I think the best people are called to do it. And I think these are individuals that are doing it at the highest level. And that highest level is because they're meant to do this. And you can tell by what they do every single day.
So let's go back 35-ish years and put you on the spot. Did you know that coaching was what you were called to do? Did you know, hey, I'm going to be a football coach at the high school level and I'm going to do it for my whole career? Is that something somebody talked you into and then it stuck, or was that always the vision?
That's a great question, because I've done a lot of reflection over the last few months. And one of the things that surprises me is that when my first or second year, I think I was out of high school, I was going to community college and I got involved in coaching youth football. And so I jumped into coaching at 19, 20 years of age. And even at that point, I didn't envision myself doing that as a profession for another couple of years. And it strikes me as how come I didn't know. But after another year at SIU, I realized that I wanted to get into teaching. I wanted to get into coaching. And then the light bulb just came on. Everything finally made sense to me because I was drifting a bit. And then once I made that decision to be a teacher and to go into coaching, everything became clear to me. And so from that point on, I absolutely knew, thank the Lord, I knew what I was meant to do. And, I was blessed to do what I did for a very long time. And I've said this to many people, but I never felt like I was working. I always felt I was getting up and going to do what I was meant to do, gifted to do. And thank goodness I found my niche, because I don't know how good I am at everything else in the world, but I felt like I was served to do that. And I worked hard at it, and I didn't mind the work ethic. I didn't mind putting my nose to the grindstone. I loved what I did every single day. I even left teaching and left coaching still loving it. And I think that's pretty awesome.
So one of the things you're going to be asking on this podcast is influences and who impacted and who inspired the coaches that you talk to. So I'm going to ask you, growing up, playing sports, did you have certain influences that shaped how you went into coaching, kind of things that even throughout your coaching career you still carried with you from the way you saw other people run practices or address a team, or quotes and different mantras and mottos that you saw other coaches use as you were growing up that you really stuck with? And obviously you put your own spin on things and you
of course
change it over time. But as you first, especially as a young coach, got into it, who influenced you and impacted?
Yeah, I mean, I've been this vessel, just been poured into by so many different people. It started with my father. He was my first coach, and he was an amazing baseball coach. And he did things back when I was a little kid playing baseball for my first experience that I find were groundbreaking stuff I see today in the coaching profession. My father was doing many, many years ago, and he was very gifted. And I'd like to share that at length sometime. But my father, first of all, my older brother was my coach a few years later. He did a lot of the same things. I had 2 high school football coaches, Kirby Phillips, who went on to an amazing career as track and cross country coach at Salem High School. And Chuck Buddy, who was my varsity football coach in Salem, had a profound influence on me. And I don't think I realized till a few years later just how big that influence was. So those individuals probably set the tone for me, planted seeds in me that began to grow as I got into my third year of college. And once they began to grow, I could tell their influence was profound on me. And so even when I took my first head coaching job at 25, a job that I really wasn't ready to take, but nobody else wanted, I used what those individuals put into me, I think, to survive those first few years. And then I followed examples of guys like Al Martin at DuQuoin and Mike Rood and influences like Roger Lipe with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes and there's so many coaches, even professional and college coaches, that I began to follow and study. So I'm the byproduct of probably nothing original. I've stolen most of the good ideas I've ever had, but I understood that I didn't have to make it up. I could just follow what successful people do and model that and use that. And it has to be stuff that fits my sport, fits what I do. But I feel like those influences were great and got me off to a great start and allowed me to continue that.
So we just talked about how being a good coach can translate across sports. Could we have put Kerry Martin in charge of another sport if there was an emergency at Marion High School and Mr. Shornack or Mr. Gadisky calls you and says, "Coach, quick, we need a fill-in coach for a sport"? Obviously, you would have had to take time to learn some personnel and study some things and get ready. I know you're not going to go into it blind and just show up on the sidelines, but did you ever envision yourself like, man, if I ever got the chance to coach a baseball game or a basketball game, I would have loved to crack at it? Is that maybe another series that we could dive into where you throw Coach Martin in another sport and see if he can handle it?
Well, I think, there's a certain thing about coaches where I think we have this mentality we can fix things. I took over 4 programs that were not very successful, and I had to do some things to try to change that. And I think there's a part of me that believes, and I think that I could go in there and do a decent job. I would have to learn the expertise that only the people of that profession would know. But I don't know. I think that's a great question. It's a challenging thought. But I didn't sit around and think I could do better than somebody. But I always thought I could go in and I could be of some help to a program. And I think every good coach believes that they can fix things, do things. If they don't know, they'll find out how. But that is an interesting question. And I think that's I'm gonna get into that with my guests a little bit about what were their influences and where they think they would have landed if they weren't in coaching and teaching. Because for me, that's one of the toughest questions I have for myself is, if I hadn't done that for a living, what would I have done and where would I have landed? And I'd like to think I would have still been successful, but I don't know, because I felt so served to do what I did. I felt the Lord really guided me where I needed to be. But there's some unknowns in that too. So
you talked about coaches that like to fix things, and you said you took over 4 programs that you had to kind of build up. Here at Marion, we were so blessed for the last 17 years to just have a winner. So you've been on both sides of it. You've been on the rebuilding side of things. You've been on the maintaining side of things and not getting complacent with success. As a coach, and this is something you're going to dive into with your guest, do you have a preference? Are you the kind of guy that would almost have more fun if the program needed torn down and built back up again? Did you ever, Mary, in the last 15 plus years, ever feel like, man, this isn't as fun as when we were building this thing to the ground? I mean, obviously what you guys did at Marion was amazing, but what was your personal preference on being in there from the renovation process? Got to come in, we got to fix things, we got to fundraise, we got to go back to square one, we got to get back into youth football, build it up from the 5th grade level on up? Or did you find it more challenging year after year with a new group, maybe a new quarterback, a couple changes here and there? How do we do it again?
They both have their own unique challenges. I mean, I think there's a challenge to rebuilding where you're trying to change the culture. You're trying to put together the right pieces in your coaching staff. You're having to find a scheme or schemes that best fit the talent of that individual group of kids you have. And I think there's a challenge to that I loved. But after 4 times, I really wasn't looking for a 5th place to rebuild. I had the rebuilding I wanted to do. The maintaining is probably even more difficult. I think because you concern yourself with, complacency. You can, for yourself and for your players. I think you have to constantly stay motivated. If you're good for any length of time, you become a target for everybody you play. You're not going to upset anybody because everyone's expecting big things from you. I think there's an expectation after you've had success that people expect success. And so with that comes some pressure. One great Southern Illinois coach called it, you got to feed the monster that you build. So, and I think, so they both have unique challenges. And I think there's things I liked about both. But certainly I think once we turned the corner here at Marion, I wanted to run this thing until I was finished. I really didn't explore other job opportunities. I really wanted to finish the job here and build a winner long term, and then be able to turn it over to my guys to continue. And as of right now, they are doing a superb job of that, and I'm not surprised at all because I knew they were ready.
One thing I wanted to ask you, and I know firsthand because 15, 16 years ago, I was in your government class. I was in your global studies class at Marion High School. Teaching just wasn't like the thing that you had to do to be able to coach football.
Right.
You fully were invested as a teacher, and I saw that firsthand in 2 of your classes that I got to take. And I know from talking to you as we were setting this up, you're still finding ways to get back into the classroom.
Yeah.
So that was obviously something you fully enjoyed. And you touched on it a little bit earlier, but you really think that there's a correlation between being a good coach also makes someone a good teacher and vice versa. And there's a lot of obviously good teachers that don't coach, that never had any interest in getting into coaching that are fantastic in the classroom. But I would say 9 times out of 10, you find someone that's a good coach. They're also a good teacher. And you know plenty of examples without naming any names of people that just have to get the teaching side of it to make the financial part of the job work, where a school district has to find somebody a teaching position because they can't pay them enough just to coach. So you get some guys that are just sometimes going through the motions or punching the clock. But for you, that was never the case, and something that you fully believed in from 8 to 3, just as much as when you went to practice at 3 o'clock.
Well, for me, the coaching is a bit of a roller coaster. Coaching has its highs, it has its lows, and those can be weekly, they can be daily. To me, teaching was always steady. And one of the things I learned as I was starting a new job at a school and trying to get a football program going the right direction, was the teaching was what I leaned into heavily because it was almost always good, where the football may have been a little much of a challenge. And I think Marion's a great example of that. The first 3 years here, we did not have a lot of football success. The teaching was amazing, and I think that helped sustain me. I think it's a shame that there are coaches that don't teach well because they don't put anything into it, because I think there's no excuse for that, because I feel like if you're good on the court, if you're good on the field, you can be just as good in the classroom. And I still miss the classroom as much as I miss the gridiron. I have found ways. I'm teaching a night school class. I've taught summer school. I'm always looking for ways to get back in the classroom, and I still love that. But I did every day. I mean, I look forward to having my classes in front of me and teaching those lessons. And from my last year, which ended in the spring COVID time, was my last semester, and kind of a weird way to end. But I was still loving what I did in that classroom every single day. And I think I love the consistency that had. It was just a great way to make a living, to try to make a difference, to have an impact. And then, of course, you put the whistle around your neck and you get to go do the coaching part, which was obviously a blessing to me. So I was a pretty happy guy when I got to do those two things, have those two separate entities, but really, to me, they're the same thing. It's just teaching, and one's a little more vocal maybe than the other, a little more hands-on, but it's still teaching.
as part of this podcast, not necessarily going to restrict it to high school, might not restrict it to junior high. I mean, you hope to have all sorts of levels on here. Some people are just complacent, they're not looking to move up. They're not looking to climb the ladder. And I think that's really fascinating. And then might, as we go along, end up with a college coach or someone that's been at that level, might be retired now or so on. Talk about how different people are called to different levels. I'm sure people came to you multiple times throughout your career. Coach, you're doing a great job. Are you going to go to the college level? Coach, we need you, to start coaching middle school too. Like, I'm sure you've been pulled different ways, but for you felt like your calling was the high school level, the varsity level. Other people might only ever be called at the very lower levels, is in the youth or the volunteer ranks or the middle school. Certain people just have certain skills that fit different age brackets. Right. But maybe if they were given a chance, they could succeed at higher levels, but they don't want the stress or this time commitment or so on. But there's a lot of different great coaches at a lot of different levels. There are.
And I think, you're right. Some people are built more for the younger athlete. I've had guys I've worked with that preferred coaching younger athletes, preferred coaching the lower levels. I've had guys that I've known who could only think of college level. That's all they ever wanted, and that's what they did. And then some of them have bounced back and forth between the two. And I think for me, high school was always what I was always envisioned as doing and had a heart for. I think the college game, as I got to know some of the coaches at SIU over the years, and I saw the time commitment level, the amount of time they spent on the road recruiting, I just decided that I just didn't want to do that, because with that comes some sacrifices you have to make that I didn't want to make. And there's no judgment. I mean, everybody's different. That just wasn't for me. I wanted to be home more and be with my kids and my family. So for me, that's what I felt more suited to do. But I think coaching is coaching. And I think if you were placed at another level, I think you could do it. And most anyone who's a talented coach or teacher could do it. But I do think we kind of fit into a lane maybe better. And for me, it was high school.
One thing that you want to talk about on this podcast as well is changing with the times.
Yeah.
You're a guy that got into it very young, fresh out of college, 1980s, all the different challenges that had at that time. You get out of it in the 2020s. We're fresh out of the pandemic as you're wrapping up your teaching and your coaching career and the technology, and not only the way your job as a coach changed from the old days of tapes and having to scout on videotape and trading tapes and meeting guys to hand physical copies of tape.
That's right.
Then you're getting out of it with simple as clicking a few buttons and you can have it at your fingertips, and maybe technology's too advanced now where some of the things that you used to get away with, there's not as many secrets because everything's overanalyzed, so much data, analytics, that kind of thing. How did you have to change with the times, not only from the preparation and the scouting, but then the student athlete that you're coaching? They're getting hit a lot of different ways now with screens and phones in front of them all the time, social media, criticism online, things that when you first got into coaching, you maybe didn't have to protect your players as much because it was just the good old-fashioned newsprint, and now people can just take to social media and everyone's got to take all the time. So you've seen that firsthand, and as you bring these different coaches in, that's something you're going to address with them as well.
Yeah, I am, and that's what one of the great things I think about this is getting into the heart of a coach regarding coaching today's athlete, because it's the athlete hasn't changed, but what's around the athlete has changed dramatically, and that influences who they are and how they perform and how they prepare. So yeah, you're right. I started in what I call the old school era. You had to send scouts to games, and they had clipboards, and they sat in the stands, and they took notes, and they brought that information back, and you had to build a scheme, a game plan based on the eyes and the ears of the guys you sent out. Then we started trading VHS tapes with each other, and that was weird. And my wife has stories of going out and meeting some strange man at Dairy Queen. It's very clandestine. It was like something out of some CIA novel. She's meeting some man and exchanging these tapes. So yeah, my wife has done it all. So yeah, it's just and then we get to the point now where with a punch of a button, we can send film to someone, receive film from somebody. You can actually have film on the same night. You wake up the next morning and there's your film and there's your opponent's film. And
got people like us broadcasting your games.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's right there for everyone to see, which, if you'd have told me that 20 years ago, I'd have been like, what? So it has changed a lot, and it has changed the way we prepare. I think our kids can now get on their phone and have access to film and study. Our kids are influenced greatly by the cell phone, and I think we've seen a loss in our kids' amount of sleep they're getting. Social media is an influence. I think what they see on Twitter and TikTok and Snapchat and things have influenced the way they practice, the way they play, the way they want to perform. And you can see the influence of college and pro football on kids much more quickly than you could just watching games on Sunday on TV. So I had to make adjustments, and I knew that if I didn't adjust, I was going to have to get out. And so beginning in the early 2000s is where it really started happening, and I had to rethink the way I trained my players, the way we practiced, the way we prepared, a lot of things. And I had great advice. As I said, I went to clinics, I talked to other coaches who were having success and saying, what are you doing to make this adjustment? And so I learned a lot. I made some mistakes. I learned from those, and I tried to make adjustments. But I think over time, we kind of found our way into coaching in the 2020s. And I think my guys who have taken over are continuing that. But it has been a challenge. And I think things are changing, Riley, much more quickly than they used to. Change used to come slow. We scouted for years and years. We traded VHS tapes for years. And then all of a sudden, every year, something different is happening, technologically speaking. And now you're broadcasting every game. And so things are happening so quickly that coaches are really having to kind of fly by the seat of their pants and figure out things much more quickly than I had to.
I have 2 more questions for you before we wrap up. One question I never could have asked you as we were doing this on Thursdays before a game because, like you said, things get out so much faster now.
Yeah.
What's your secrets to success? I've never been able to ask Coach Martin this question for his secrets because you never could let him out before a big game. I'm going to come to you on a Thursday and say, Coach, what's your secrets for tomorrow night? But now as we step back and we sit on the couch, what's one secret to Coach Martin's success and all these accomplishments that I rattled off at the beginning? Taking Marion to the playoffs 17 straight years, taking Marion from a football culture when you first got here in your first 3 years that you had to build from the ground up, and you told me before in other interviews you had to fire yourself because it wasn't a very good start and you weren't happy with the results. And then you retire from it with not only a completely changed program, completely changed atmosphere, stadium, program, culture. It's, the community just loves Marion football now. What do we not know from behind the scenes? What made all that possible for that big turnaround?
I think a big part of it is understanding that you can never stop learning. I had to be really humble about when I failed, not to point the finger and start with myself and say, what am I not doing right? And I feel like that was a big part of it. I think also finding what successful people do and asking and researching what they do and how they do it. And don't be afraid to adopt that and make it fit your program. I haven't tried to reinvent the wheel. I haven't tried to do things in some maverick style. I really wanted to find out what successful people did and copy that. High school coaches, college coaches, whoever it may be. I study a lot, Riley. I read a lot. I watch a lot. I listen a lot. And the Lord gave you 2 ears and one mouth, and I've tried to keep that ratio as best I could. But I think those are the things that I think about. I think about just staying humble and staying hungry and wanting to learn and never stop. I mean, I guarantee you one of the things we're going to find out in this podcast is how hard these individuals work and how hungry they are to maintain their level of success. And I've seen a lot of these individuals working and their work ethic firsthand. And that's a huge part of it too. The preparation, the ability in today's world to build relationships with your players, because those relationships, allow you to do two things. It allows you to motivate your kids better than you normally could without a relationship. And number two, when discipline is necessary, you've got to have a relationship with players today to bring about discipline that's effective. And so those are just some insights from me that I think really helped me over the long term. But as I said earlier, I think people pouring into me and my willingness to listen and to adopt and model after others was a huge part of what I did and led to some success.
So one other thing that you're going to touch on, and I know it's going to be a talking point as you bring these guests on, is legacies.
Yeah.
And, you're going to ask people that sit in this seat every week, how important is leaving a legacy to you? What do you want your legacy to be? All those kinds of questions that maybe during the moment as you're just worried about going back to the coach speak that we talked about, one game at a time, week by week, all that kind of stuff that you've given reporters like me a million times.
Of course.
We're just taking it one day at a time. I'm not worried about my legacy. But now that you get to kind of step back and reflect, and this is a question that she'll be asking moving forward, but I want to ask you, how important was it to you all those years to maybe take a step back, maybe after the season's over, you turn the equipment in, to step back and think, this is what my legacy is going to be, or this is what I want my legacy to be. And, as you're kind of stepping out of it now and reflecting back, what do you think yours is?
Yeah, I think the only real lasting legacy I have is in my kids, my students and my players, my coaches. That's the only legacy I have. It won't take long for people to not know how many games I won. It won't take long for young players at Marion to not know who I am. Those things are fleeting, and I know that. I've seen that happen many times in my life, and I learned early on that those things that you value maybe when you're a young coach and you think those things really matter end up not mattering very much. The only legacy I have is in the lives of the young people I taught and I coached, the coaches that I poured into and they gave back to me, and what they do beyond their time with me. And if I could have had some influence in their life, if I could have made them a little better, if I could have helped reinforce what mom and dad are trying to teach, if I can be an influence in their faith, in their work ethic, in the way they live their lives, if they're a little bit better father or husband or sibling or whatever, if I could have a positive impact on that, then that's the only legacy I really care about. And it is nice to walk back into Wildcat Stadium and to look around and think how far we've come from the first year I was there. But that is not about me. That's about the efforts of a whole lot of people. And so I sometimes probably get more credit than I deserve. I think a lot of that is a lot of teamwork from a lot of great coaches, administrators, board members, athletic directors, fellow teachers, and a great family that supported everything I did for a long time and shared me with my other family. And so it's all a team effort. And in the end, that's what this is about. It's just about a good, strong team effort. And I was blessed to have people pour into me, and I hope I was able to pour back some of that to others.
So as we kind of head out from this first episode of the Coaches at Brew Getting Coffee podcast, tell people at home what Friday nights feel like for Coach Martin now. Not getting as much practice time throughout the week, but Friday nights probably feel a lot different. It's been an adjustment. We talked about that off camera a little bit. What's the day-to-day life of the first non-fall football season? You got a taste in 2020, but to be fully stepped away in the fall, it's got to be.
Yeah, it's been a challenge. I'm at peace with the decision not to coach anymore, but that doesn't. But Friday nights have been a challenge for me. I've tried to give the staff the space they deserve to build their program or continue the program under their leadership, and so I've listened online, and I tried not listening online or watching, and then I've been to some other schools to watch some of my former players that are now coaches, and that's been good. But there's still a void on Friday. It's a bit of a challenge to not be a part of that game planning, play calling, and that celebration at Wildcat Stadium. So I think it'll take some time to get over that part of it, but I'm proud of what my guys are achieving, and it's fun to go out and watch some of my former players coach and do what they do now, and so it's all good, but it's still going to take some time. But I'm hoping I can do some things like this, and maybe lift some coaches up and bring some of what they're doing into the living rooms and into the minds and hearts of some fans out there who know who they are, but I really want them to know who they are. And so that's what I'm looking forward to.
So that'll about do it for this first episode of the Coaches at Crown Brew Getting Coffee podcast. If you like what you see, give us a like, give us a thumbs up, share, tag someone in the comments that you think will enjoy this ongoing series. And Coach, I think I can speak for you when I say that coaches throughout Southern Illinois, especially ones that you have relationships with, people that you've met along the way, they need to be on alert. They might be getting a message soon. They might be brought in here to sit in this seat, and you're going to talk to them, and it's going to be a great avenue to kind of go beyond what we know from normal newspaper interviews, normal media interviews, and get kind of a closer look at who these people are.
I'm looking forward to being on that side, asking the questions and bringing some real insight into the lives of these individuals. So I'm excited about it. Thanks.
Stay looking on our page for when episode 2 will drop. Coach will have a special guest here for the episode 2. Stay tuned to the Marion Star social media pages. We'll be keeping you updated when that episode will be coming. Coach, we're excited to do this. Thanks for asking us to be a part of it. When you came to us with this idea, it was a no-brainer. Also want to thank the staff and the team here at Crown Brew for opening their space and allowing us to do this week after week. And special thanks to Ross and Bill Swinford behind the scenes for all their work to make this possible.
Awesome. Thanks.
We'll see you for episode 2 coming soon. For Coach Martin, I'm Riley Swinford. This has been the Coaches at Crown Brew Getting Coffee podcast.